Hello. As per a previous video, that back there is Cupid Takes a Holiday. That is my novel that is available on Amazon. There's a link below. I'm not getting outside sponsors, but I can advertise my own stuff. So please buy Cupid Takes a Holiday, paperback, Kindle, or Kindle Unlimited. Anyway, uh, these two Are You Afraid of the Dark episodes, The Unfinished Painting and Train Magic. Both of them I recognized. I had seen them before. Train Magic I knew going in just from the title. I've seen this one. And Unfinished Painting, it happened gradually, but then there was one. Gradually I recognized it, but then there was one moment where I thought if I hadn't already recognized it, this would be it. Unfinished Painting also strongly resembles a very bad short story that I wrote called The Painting Ghost. That I put on my blog a couple of Octobers ago. It was not one of my best. It was very bad, but probably, at least subconsciously, I was channeling this episode, which is very good. It stars Jewel Staite, Catalina from Space Cases, and whatever her name is in Firefly/Serenity. And the episode starts with Gary stepping in with a story for Tucker, because Tucker hasn't been able to come up with a story, and Gary's the older brother. He's got to protect his younger brother's reputation. He knows that Tucker's having trouble, but they start the meeting, and Tucker's about to explain he doesn't have a story, but then Gary steps in and says, actually, Tucker, would you mind if I go? I know it's your turn, but would you mind if I go? And then Tucker, of course, go ahead. So saves him some embarrassment there. So Cody, Jewel Staite's character, is an artist. But she's worried that she's not inspired enough, that she's not a good enough artist, that she's trying to draw a tree, but it doesn't feel like a tree, it only looks like a tree, that sort of thing. Stuff artists struggle with. Her boyfriend, Lucas, I think it's her boyfriend, and he tries to reassure her, but the doubt's always there. And then one day she sees a strange girl, very artsy-looking girl, with a floppy kind of beret, sees her, and then she runs off, drops the hat. Cody thinks, well, she needs her hat, so she grabs it, tries to follow her, look where she's going, and thinks she sees her go into the Hunter Gallery, which is an art gallery run by, it's either Mrs. Breyer or Mrs. Briery. I thought she said Breyer, but then on the paintings she signed her name. It looked like Briery, or maybe it was just an artistic flourish, but in any case, I'll call her Mrs. B, because that's how I wrote it, mostly for space-saving purposes. So Cody meets Mrs. B in the Hunter Gallery, but Mrs. B says, I have not seen a young girl run in here, but if you leave the hat, maybe she will come back for it. Maybe she left, and maybe she'll come back for it. But then Cody notices all the paintings in the gallery, and that they're all signed by the same person, and Mrs. B says, yes, they're all mine. And Cody is impressed, and she wants to be an artist like this. She wants to produce this kind of paintings. Meanwhile, we see in another room an artist named Jenna is finishing. Oh, well, first, Mrs. B shows Cody a room full of unfinished paintings, and then Cody's left to kind of wander around and imagine what the artist was going for, I guess. And we go to another back room, a studio, where another artist is working on an unfinished painting. The artist is Jenna, and she tries to switch brushes because she needs a finer tip than the one she's been using. But Mrs. B catches her and says, no, you're supposed to use the brush that I gave you. That's the rule of this studio. You have to use my brush. You can't switch brushes. And so Jenna goes back to using the old brush and finishes the painting eventually. We'll see that later in the episode. And then Cody kind of feels drawn to various paintings, and Mrs. B offers to let her finish one of the paintings. And so she picks one that takes place in a ballroom. And at first she's reluctant. She says, well, it's somebody else's painting. I couldn't, but then I think this is the back and forth. Mrs. B says, well, then it won't be, somebody else has to paint it or it won't be completed. I think that happens. I might have made that part up, but in any case, after we see this, Cody leaves for the day. She said she'll be back to finish the painting. We see Mrs. B go to the cabinet where she keeps her brushes, and also we see that she keeps a head in the cabinet. The head doesn't do anything, it's just there, but it's strange. First hint that there's something off about Mrs. B. So Cody comes back the next day, and I believe she works alongside Jenna for a while, or at least knows that she's there, sees what Jenna's working on, and eventually finds that she too needs a new brush, but she didn't bring one of her own. So she goes to the cabinet where Mrs. B, we previously saw her keeping her brushes, and is not exactly, she sees the head, she's a little stunned, but ultimately doesn't seem too bothered by it, takes out a new brush, and goes back to the painting. Oh, she tries to take out a new brush, but she touches it, and then she gets swept into seemingly one of the paintings from the Hunter Gallery, and there's a girl in it. The girl turns around and says, "Don't finish the painting." And I forgot to mention that when Mrs. B goes to the cabinet previously, she takes one of the brushes and kind of burns the little metal ring in the middle of it over a candle, some kind of ritual, probably preparing it for Cody to use. But anyway, don't finish the painting is what the vision says. But she goes back and she goes toward the painting. I think that she has a dialogue with Lucas about whether or not she should, and she wants to. She can feel herself getting more inspired, and he, I think, shows her through her book she's gotten more inspired since she's been working on it. And then we cut to a scene where Mrs. B is insisting that Jenna signs the painting, and this might have been what I was superimposing earlier on Cody's reluctance to actually finish a painting. Jenna says, "I can't sign it, it's not mine, I just finished it." But Mrs. B says, "Oh, well, she signs," she just insists. And then we see Jenna start to sign. And then it cuts to, I was writing this in the dark. Cody asking about Jenna, because Jenna's not there anymore, but the girl in the painting that Jenna was working on looks a lot like Jenna, and has been signed by Mrs. B. And Cody asks about her, and Mrs. B just says Jenna's not going to come back anymore. She doesn't want to, I guess. She called and she said she wouldn't be back. Cody is suspicious, but still continues to go along with the plan to finish the painting. She once again sees the girl who warned her in a kind of a vision, and then she... What? This is Juno's something. I don't know. I'll try to remember what happened because my writing is not great. She touches Jenna's brush in the cabinet because she goes back to the cabinet she's investigating things. Then she touches all the brushes and sees visions of all the girls who have been taken by the brushes. So that was the last straw for her. She doesn't finish the painting, but she calls Lucas to pick her up, which, the first time she went there, she was somewhere, and then she followed the girl to the Hunter Gallery. So you can leave the Hunter Gallery without Lucas coming to pick you up, and then you can call him from a safer place. But it's one of those things where then there's no episode, then there's no story. It just ends. But Mrs. B catches her, and the painting is finished. She has finished finishing the painting, and Mrs. B insists that she signs the painting, which of course then, as you might have guessed, sucks her into the painting. Not like in Jumanji, the Jumanji movie, but we see that the image of the painting changes, so it looks like her character, and then she's waltzing around to, I think it might be something from the Firebird Ballet, but I wasn't sure about the music. And so then Lucas arrives when Mrs. B says that Cody didn't she didn't come in today, but Lucas finds her jacket, and then the girl from before briefly reappears, and Lucas chases her out into the alley because he's like, maybe you know what's going on here. And Mrs. B has started to burn the painting that Cody is in, which, what does that even do? Because Lucas isn't going to suspect the magic. He's going to suspect foul play, perhaps, but not the magic. So why burn the painting? Anyway, Cody eventually, her brush, and I don't know if this happened in all the paintings that all the girls finished, but her brush is in the painting with her, and she picks it up and breaks it. She breaks away from the dance. She picks up the brush and breaks it, freeing herself. And then she takes all the brushes, and the little girl that Lucas chases into the alley turns out to be Mrs. B. And Cody burns all the brushes in the fire that Mrs. B is using to burn the thing, but only Jenna returns. Presumably, I guess they're from other eras. Mrs. B says she's been collecting souls for centuries, or whatever it is she's doing, and it's a bit muddled at the end, but I liked it. And then Tucker says that Gary's story inspired him, so next week he will be ready. Now, the next one was Tale of Train Magic, and it was told by Frank. But so we're not, I guess, they meet all the time, but we only see certain meetings. And it doesn't necessarily make sense in sequence. Or maybe Frank was always scheduled to be then, and Tucker took Gary's next turn. Maybe that's what happened. Anyway, A Tale of Train Magic I was definitely familiar with. I had distinct memories of images from it. Frank, I guess he's a bit late to the meeting, but he arrives kind of chugging along like a train. He's got a boombox, he's making train sounds, he's got a big flashlight that he's holding out in front. So he arrives in the character as a train, not necessarily up to Rachel standards, but I give him props for it. It was nicely theatrical. So he tells the story of Tim. Now, Tim and Tim's brother, not Ray, not Cap. Where did I write Tim's brother's name? Maybe I didn't. Hank. Tim's brother is Hank. Their father was a conductor who died, I guess, in the line of duty, but he was a train conductor. And Hank has kind of moved on, but Tim is obsessed with trains. He hangs out at the train station. He's got a big train set, and he wants to be a conductor. So as we enter the story, Hank is kind of saying to Tim, you don't spend time with friends, you don't do anything, you just hang around at the station. You need to live your life. And arguably what Tim is doing is living his life, but he's also hanging out with all adults, and so Hank does have some good points. Hank kind of takes their father's hat, which Tim likes to wear, and does the big brother thing of holding it above his head, and I don't know if it's wind or Hank throwing it, but it ends up on an abandoned train track. And when Tim goes to get it, he meets Ray Lawson, the conductor of 713, who says that the train will be along any moment. It seems like it should occur to Tim that the conductor would be on the train that he's the conductor of, but whatever. And this is where Ray introduces the idea that conductors got to have a watch. It's important that a conductor have a watch. Ray is from another time, as we later learn. If you hadn't guessed, Ray's a ghost. So Tim asks his friend Cap, who is an engineer at the train station, about 713. And Cap says there's been no train there in many years, 80 years, I guess. And then the conductor of the train that's about to leave from the station asks Tim if he wants to do last call, and Tim very cutely says, last call for this train, all aboard. So that's the relationship that he has at his dad's old workplace, and it's nice, but he should have friends from his own age group. Later on, Ray comes to Tim's front door, where he meets Hank, and he gives Hank a toy train car to give to Ray, to give to Tim to put on his train set. And Tim does this, and then turns on the train set, and then there's a bit of an earthquake, and Tim ends up on the train, in the car that he just added. It has very detailed little people in it, and now one of them is Tim. And so then the people on the train are thrilled to have someone new. One offers to play poker with him, and then Ray appears and says that Tim is the new conductor. Tim doesn't want to be the conductor of this train. He's freaked out, but he knows what to do. He pulls the brake because at least he can get off the train. But of course, pulling the brake ends the fantasy, the magic, and Tim ends up on the floor of his basement where the train set is. Then he tells Cap what happens, and Cap, probably thinking that it was just a dream or something, explains that the train... first he explains train magic, which is essentially that trains communicate in their own way with people. And then he tells the story of Ray Lawson, who was the conductor of the 713, which crashed right near Tim's house, which is why that's the rail where that Tim wanders about at night. And Cap also explains that before radios, in order to get messages to conductors on trains, the messages were hung from these poles, and conductors had to know when the poles were coming up, and if they looked ahead and saw that there was a message there, they had to reach out and grab it. They had to go by slowly, reach out and grab it. And there was a message that Ray had to switch to a different track, but Ray fell asleep and didn't get the message, and the train crashed. And that's the story of how Ray became a ghost, and the whole train became a ghost, and it's caught in a loop. It's one of those caught in a loop, like the cab driver from the very first episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark? He forgot to check his watch, he fell asleep, and the train crashed. And every night it goes by the house again. Cap then goes to the site of the crash, thinking maybe he'll confront the ghost. And the ghost then possesses him or hypnotizes him, and he ends up on the train. Tim watches this happen, and the train is this big black train, and it looks like it's got fire coming out of that little chimney at the front of it. I don't know what it's called, and I didn't look it up. I meant to, but I didn't. And then when Tim looks into the toy train, he sees now there's a little Cap, which Hank also sees, but he says, "Oh yeah, it looks exactly like him." Doesn't believe that there's magic going on. So Tim then he says he's got to go rescue Cap. So he sets the train set going, tells Hank to change when he hears the train coming, change the tracks. So pull the lever that moves the little thing, I don't know the train terms, that moves the track to the other track. There are two tracks parallel, and then there's a connecting thing that moves. I should have looked up what it's called. That's Hank's, and Hank just kind of wandering around back there finds the thing, but he doesn't believe what's going on. So Tim is back on the train. Ray's there, but he's kind of in a trance, and Cap is there, kind of in a trance. Ray disconnected the brakes, so Tim can't pull the brakes again, and they can get out that way. But then Ray gives Tim the pocket watch, because the conductor's got to have a watch, he says. And once he gives Tim the watch, he says, "I'm not the conductor anymore. I don't have to be part of this loop. You will be part of the loop." But Tim smashes the watch, and that is when Hank is able to pull the lever that changes the track. The train goes to the track that it should have gone to 80 years ago, and it leaves Tim and Cap and Ray behind, because the train has moved on, but it has left Ray, because I guess Ray was the one at fault, and so he doesn't get to be conductor of the train anymore now that the train has gone on with its journey. Another somewhat confusing ending, and then Tim decides not to spend so much time at the station. Cap was also, like Hank, saying, you should be hanging with people your own age. You should be a kid while you're a kid. So that's the tale of the unfinished painting and the tale of train magic, and the end of Season 4. Season 5 opens with the tale of the Dead Man's Float, featuring a new storyteller, Stig. I look forward to meeting Stig. And Stig is also the storyteller of the tale of Station 109.1, which has guest stars Ryan Gosling and Gilbert Gottfried. So that should be very interesting to see. In the meanwhile, pleasant dreams, everyone. Buy my book.